Roll. Ayara, Ramanara, Kutkabihari, Ayara, Ramanara, Kutkabihari, Yogi Janavallabha, Anivaradhari, Yogi Janavallabha, Givaradhari, Kichodanandana, Bhajanaranjana, Kichodanandana, Bhajanaranjana, Kinnakiro Vanachari, Kiro Vanachari. Jaya Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Madhava Kunjabi Hari Hey Gupti Janavallabha Varadari Jaya Gupti Varadari Vishuddhanandana Svajajanaranjana Vishuddhanandana Svajajanaranjana Nina Vanata Piravanacha Mara Punjabi Hari Jaya Jaya Punjabi Hari Jaya Bhakti Janavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Bhakti Janavallabha Girivaradari Shodanamana Rajajanaranjana Naminatiro Vatari Nunavira Sanachari. Whatever you want. I am Vishnupada Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto, the activities of Maharaja Priyavrata, famous Maharaja Priyavrata. Everybody can hear me? Tarka, Kabu, can you give me a thumbs up? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay. Text number 19. Tvam tav jajat nabhangri saroja kosha durgashrito nirjita sat saptanaha bunkshveha bogan purushati dashtan vimukta sangaha prakritim bhajasva. Word for word. Tvam, yourself too, then. Abjanabha, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose navel is like a lotus flower. Hungry feet, Saroja lotus. Kosha, whole. Durga, the stronghold. Ashritaha, taken shelter of. Nirjita, conquered. Sapatnaha, the six enemies, the mind and five senses. Bunkshwa, enjoy. Iha, in this material world. Boga, Bogan, enjoyable things. Purusha, by the Supreme Person. Atidishtan, extraordinarily ordered. Vimukta, liberated. Sangha, from material association. Kritim, constitutional position. Bhajasva, enjoy. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Lord Brahma continued, my dear Priyavrata. This is Shukadev Goswami speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, describing what Lord Brahma said. Lord Brahma continued, my dear Priyavrata, whose navel is also like a lotus. The opening in the lotus feet of the Lord, that's interesting, whose navel is also like a lotus. Thus conquer the six sense organs, the mind and knowledge acquiring senses. Accept material enjoyment because the Lord extraordinarily has ordered you to do this. You will thus always be liberated from material association and be able to carry out the Lord's orders in your constitutional position. Jai. Report by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. There are three kinds of men within this material world. Those who are trying to enjoy the senses to the most are called karmis. Above them are the jnanis, who try to conquer the urges of the senses, and above them are the yogis, who have already conquered the senses. None of them, however, are situated in a transcendental position. Only devotees, who belong to none of the above-mentioned groups, are transcendental. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 14:26, Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityatam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Lord Brahma herein advises Priyavrata to remain transcendental in the fortress, not of family life, but of the lotus feet of the Lord. Abjanabangri Saroja. When a bumblebee enters the opening of a lotus flower and drinks its honey, it is fully protected by the petals of the lotus. Prabhupada's very beautifully poetic here in his purports. When a bumblebee enters the opening of a lotus flower and drinks its honey, it is fully protected by the petals of the lotus. The bee is literally one who always seeks the reality of Godhead, is protected from all dangers. It is therefore said in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-58, Samashritaye padapalava plavam mahat param punyayasho murarahe bhavam budir vatsa padam param padam param padam yad vipadam natesham. It's some magnificent poetry right there, too. For one who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, everything becomes easier. Indeed, even crossing the great ocean of nescience, Bhavambudi, is exactly like crossing the hoof print of a calf created by a calf. Vatsapadam. For such a devotee, there is no question of remaining in a place where every step is dangerous. Our actual duty is to carry out the supreme order of the personality of Godhead. If we are fixed in our determination to carry out the supreme order of the Lord, we are always secure, regardless of where we are situated, whether in hell or in heaven. Herein, the words prakritim bhajasva are very significant. Prakritim refers to one's constitutional position. Every living entity has the constitutional position of being an eternal servant of God. Therefore, Lord Brahma advised Priyavrata, be situated in your original position as an eternal servant of the Lord. If you carry out his orders, you will never fall, even in the midst of material enjoyment. Material enjoyment achieved by dint of one's fruitive activities differs from material enjoyment given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, dint of one's fruitive activities means your karma from previous lives. So, you may be enjoying, due to piety, religious activity in a previous life where you weren't envious and actually followed, you know, basic, commonsensical religious duties. And then, so in this lifetime, you get good karma for that and enjoy. And, but Prabhupada is saying that this is different. What Maharaj Priyavrata is enjoying is actually given to him by Krishna himself. And so therefore Prabhupada is making a distinction between those types of material enjoyment. If Krishna wants you to enjoy, that's up to Krishna. A devotee sometimes appears to be in a very opulent position, but he accepts that position to follow the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a devotee is never affected by material influences. The devotees in Krishna consciousness movement are preaching all over the world in accordance with the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They have to meet many karmis, but by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they are unaffected by material influences. He has blessed them. As described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 7:129, Kabu Arapi A Tani Pabe Morasange. A sincere devotee who engages in the service of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by preaching his cult all over the world will never be affected by Vishaya Taranga, material influences. On the contrary, in due course of time, he will return to the shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and will thus have perpetual association with him. Chai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Ananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master kindly forced open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances to such a spiritual master. Namo Shivaya Krishna Scribe. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. One who is situated in household life and who systematically conquers his mind and five. Oh, wait, sorry, that was 18. Sorry, my fault. Translation again. That was a little taste of yesterday. This is for those who are just joining us. This is the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 1, the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata, text number 19, and I should be reading. Lord Brahma continued, my dear Priyavrata, seek shelter inside the opening in the lotus feet of the Lord. The opening in the lotus feet of the Lord, I love that. Whose navel is also like a lotus. Thus, conquer the six senses, the mind and knowledge acquiring senses. Accept material enjoyment because the Lord extraordinarily has ordered you to do this. You will thus always be liberated from material association and be able to carry out the Lord's orders in your constitutional position. So, Here we are, back again. The Lotus Feet of Radha Damodar, having Srimad Bhagavatam class. Uh, please give me your blessings. Well, this is the very wonderful chapter in Srimad Bhagavatam, the great compendium. Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has declared is sound representation the sound representation of all Vedic knowledge and history. And anybody who's made any kind of study of world anthropology and ancient civilizations and modern civilizations knows that there's nothing that compares to the Vedic literature on this planet. That's a fact. So, just from an academic point of view, uh, Srinivasa Swami talks about a Harvard professor. I forget or maybe he's at Columbia. I think he's at Columbia. Some professor, I forget his name now, who is just an academic, and he has declared that, that Srimad Bhagavatam of all the Vedic literature is the ultimate, and that actually Srimad Bhagavatam is the ultimate literature on the planet, just from an academic point of view, and its language, its structure, its sophistication, uh, its depth and breadth of semantics, of transferring signals of meaning, all the things which go into what makes for great literature. This Ivy League professor declared that Srimad Bhagavatam is the ultimate literature on the planet. I've made quite a survey in my 54 years of life of world literature, and I can say nothing compares to the Vedic literature. Begin to come close. And I have a great appreciation for the highest good becomes. We got disconnected there. Can I get another thumbs up if you can hear me? Hello? Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by Srila Vyasa, the incarnation of God, and it is meant for the ultimate good of all people. So we're hearing in the Bhagavatam about Maharaj Priyavrata, which is Maharaj Priyavrata is so any great literature can't just be fanatical. Otherwise, it's not great, is it? So the and it's a very narrow viewpoint, isn't it? Uh, where fanatical people they want everything to be ordered in a perfect sequence, uh, where there's no real thinking involved. And of course, at lower levels of life, this is important, actually. That's why we have rituals. That's why there's protocols. If you're gonna if you're gonna board an airplane, you want the pilot to have done the checklist before you get on the airplane, right? Just going from here to there in little flying cigar tubes is not the purpose and real meaning of life. So, at a deeper level, things aren't all about checklists and perfectly ordered at all. Uh, Prabhupada describes the end of life as a great humiliating embarrassment where the body completely breaks down. Where's your checklist, right? Uh, you're not going to be able to execute your checklist in the last moments of life. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, it deals not in fanaticism at all. Uh, Although you can cherry pick a few sort of extreme, highly poetic, extraordinary statements out of the Bhagavatam and try to claim that it's fanatical. But right here in the fifth canto, actually, but any set of verses as a whole, the Bhagavatam is not at all fanatical. The Bhagavatam is instead extremely logical. So what do I mean by that? Uh, the Bhagavatam deals in when I'm teaching young people, especially teenagers, I want them to think and express themselves. So I always ask them, "What is our philosophy?" And because these are Gurukulis, right? They've grown up in Krishna consciousness, and so they should be put to a higher standard of self-expression. They should have to be able to. They've been hearing the philosophy from birth, from great souls. It's not like they're only stuck with their parents who may not have a very high opinion of themselves. These are Hare Krishna Gurukuli devotees. The sannyasis are flying into town and giving their association to all these children. They're coming to the temple. In the temple, we have Srimad Bhagavatam class. It's not just rituals. We balance ritual with philosophy. There's Srimad Bhagavatam class every day. So the kids are saturated in all this. So I want to hear from them. I always ask them, "What is our philosophy?" And I'm looking for two responses. Uh, and you can ask yourself, "What is our philosophy?" There's two good responses, at least in my opinion. So you may have your own opinions as to what is our philosophy. But the first one is our philosophy is Yukta Vairagya. So uh, Yukta Vairagya means renunciation. Renunciation is in that famous verse, Savai pumsam parodharmo yato bhaktir hoksajay hoitakiya pratiyataya yatma suprashidati. The supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men can attain the loving transcendental service to the Supreme Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy itself. Srila Prabhupada in the purport explains that the renounced order of life is the higher path in life. There are two paths: the Bhakti Marg and, or sorry, the path of enjoyment and the path of renunciation. They're both called margs. And Prabhupada very emphatically and clearly states that the renounced path is the higher path. And so that's renunciation. So our philosophy is renunciation. But of course, in Bhagavad Gita and everywhere, philosophy, including in this chapter, Srila Prabhupada explains that he doesn't directly explain like he does in Bhagavad Gita, but all the Shastra, Prabhupada's purports, they all tie together, which is why it's important to read Prabhupada's books 3 times, not just once, 3 times, because you need to hear it all. You need to hear it all multiple times. And so Prabhupada indirectly points to that our philosophy in this chapter is Yukta Vairagya. Yukta Vairagya means connecting with, even this verse, you must enjoy. That's not renunciation, because Krishna himself has ordered you to. So, and then the verse doesn't say that, but then you achieve Yukta Vairagya. Renunciation is the higher path in life. But our philosophy is Yukta Vairagya as one of our philosophies. And then the only thing I wanted to say when I ask the kids, what is our philosophy? And if they can't say Yukta Vairagya, I make them look it up. I make them look up the verse. I may say Yukta Vairagya, and I say, what is the Sanskrit? What's it mean? Yukta Vairagya. Yuk is Yukta, it's from the root yug, means to connect, right? And it's actually where we get the word for we have so many wonderful cow protectors here. Uh, it's where we get the word for yoke, to yoke the cow to the plow, for instance. So the oxen's going to pull the plow through the field, and there has to be a connection between the plow and the cow and the ox. And that's called the yoke, goes over the shoulders of the cow, has all the chains and straps, connects to the plow or other farm implement. And that's where we get the word yoga from. Same word. It's just that the K in yukta becomes a G or vice versa. The it's actually the root is huge, YUJ, and the J becomes a K, and then the K becomes a G. That has to do with Sanskrit Sunday, which is important to learn. We should go. I remember uh, there's a group I'm on called the Granthraj emailing group. It's very nice from Mahavishnu Swami, not the Indian Mahavishnu Swami, body Mahavishnu Swami, not the Sankirtan Mahavishnu Swami with the funny hat, uh, who's in a Caucasian body. Anyway, this Maharaj very powerfully said, "You must not just enjoy your position. You all are just enjoying your positions, but you're not going deep into the Sanskrit. You must go. You must know the Sandhi. Sandhi is how the words change when they're spoken, so that the word that follows the word that you're speaking changes the form of the word that you're speaking. That's Sandhi. So huge with a J becomes K when there's a T following it in yukta. It's not huge to because that's hard to say. So the the language is highly what's called morphological, so that it changes according to how it's more efficiently spoken. So Mahavishnu Swami says, "You just want to enjoy your position, your seniority, in in ISKCON." And he says, "But you should be going deep in the Sanskrit. So go deep in the Sanskrit." Anyway, so I always make the kids say Yukta Vairagya, know what the Sanskrit means. It means to connect Krishna to our everyday material enjoyment, just like Maharaj Priyavrata is. He really wants to just go for the higher goal renunciation with Narad Muni, the most epic spiritual master. And but his father is lamenting. His father's, I think, Swayambhavu Manu, or one of the Manus is his father, was lamenting, and he doesn't he wants to take renunciation. He wants his son to take over administration, and so he goes and gets Lord Brahma. It's a great chapter because this chapter of the very epic Bhagavatam just starts off extraordinary in the fifth canto, and it just keeps running with a super extraordinary impact on us through the whole canto of the fifth canto. Uh, so, say, okay, Yukta Vairagya, that's our philosophy. But our philosophy is also something else. I'm always looking for one of two answers. You can ask yourself, what is our philosophy? So I used to be in venture capital long ago, raising money for companies. You always had to have an elevator pitch, when you button the whole I got the buttonhole Steve Job once, Steve Jobs time, and but I had the chance to buttonhole him, and you have to have your elevator pitch, right? You got to sum it down, your get it into one sentence, right? I mean, I was fortunate; my wife introduced me to him, so I got a little more time with him. And of course, I didn't give him the elevator pitch for what I was pitching. I gave him a whole philosophical story. Anyway, which he appreciated. Sorry, Krishna, Steve Jobs. He's what, like 200 million or a billion people have watched that Stanford address that he gave, where he talks about going to the Hare Krishna temple for one good meal a week in his hippie days, and he would walk barefoot 8 miles across town to get one good meal a week because he was living on top ramen or whatever. And he was a hippie, and he went to the Hare Krishna temple, and he said yes, it's the Stanford University address. Like a billion people have watched on YouTube now, and he said, "I loved it." That was in the thing. That was nice. By the way, Steve Jobs were wow, oh wow, that's pretty good. I always, I mean, that's maybe not quite the same thing as having your Gurukuli kids, reading by your bedside and chanting Hare Krishna for you. But still, wow, oh wow, is pretty good. My best friend, when his grandmother died, who I knew in a gigantic, enormous mountain mansion, drank alcohol, smoked cigarettes her whole life. When she died, she was screaming no at the top of her lungs. Oh, take wow, oh wow, over screaming no at the last moment of life. It's nice. So fanaticism not going to do much for you in the last moments of life because fanaticism is all about not having to think much and having everything be ordered for you. Uh, which there are times that's appropriate in life. We all should be fanatical at certain times in life when we're trying to get over a certain hump or whatever. That's fine. You need some checklists to make sure you're not stuck in the swampy mud and the weeds. That's helpful. But it's not the ultimate purpose of life, which you're going to face, of course, at the end of your life, or at various crossroads. Crossroads matter a lot. So, of course, leaving your body is kind of a major crossroads. So, anyway, so I always ask the kids, well, okay, what is our philosophy? And Yukta Vairagya, that's our philosophy. And connecting everything to Krishna. It's not that we artificially say, well, I'm married and I have kids, but they're annoying me, so therefore I'll just renounce them. Right? That's not renunciation. And in fact, really, such an attitude will just make your family, especially emotionally and psychologically, leave you. And then you renounced everything, anything, they have left you, which is quite different. You actually have to possess something. You can't renounce family life if your family doesn't like you. Right? Uh, so, and if you just want to get rid of them, how's your family like you? You're not a renunciate. Sorry, that's not renunciation. Uh, in fact, they have left you in their hearts. They've renounced you. You have not renounced them. That's not renunciation. So, uh, instead, we just connect everything to Krishna. That's real renunciation. Yukta Vairagya for Prabhupada Nugas is our philosophy as a real renunciation. Prabhupada did declare that the higher path is the renounced order of life. Uh, but then, like Prabhupada always does, this particular chapter is exceptional in being filled not with fanaticism, but with ambiguities. The life of Maharaj Priyavada is a study in ambiguities. You could say that the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is a study in ambiguities, with the chief ringleader of stirring the studying ambiguity pot, Narad Muni, who's always showing up at the most inconvenient times to stir the pot. Narad Muni, he's always causing trouble. So right when you think you've figured it out, Narad Muni shows up and gives just starts stirring the pot with some extreme instructions. Anyway, uh, so so you can say that the whole Bhagavatam is a study in ambiguities. So that's a hint as to what are the other answer I'm always looking for to the teenagers. Uh, it's one thing to teach young kids who are preschool and kindergarten era. All they need is responsible, non-criminal, caring adults to pay attention to them, and they'll be fine. But once you hit 8, 9, 10, you need to start preparing for having a real thinking mind. And when you're a teenager, that's a whole nother thing. That you need to actually be engaged in in thought, in dialogue, and even in on the more phonetical side, dialectic. All these things requires a little more advanced guidance when it comes to education. So I always would ask the teenage kids, "What is our philosophy?" And so the other besides Yukta Vairagya, which is our philosophy, just add Krishna. The temple president in New Varshan, when I first came there, he he was talking to me, preaching to me, encouraging me. His name's Kala Samara. He's a wonderful, exceptional leader, disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And he he was encouraging me. I was doing my yoga. I was doing my hatha yoga on the lawn in front of between the Tulsi house and the temple. It was summertime when we first came there. I put my kids in the Hare Krishna school. They were 4, and I was very committed to my kids' education. So I was always there. I was always there at the school. I was always there at the temple every day. And I thought, well, it's a great place to do hatha yoga. I'll do my hatha yoga. Just do my hatha yoga on the lawn. The temple president comes up and very kindly gives me some of his association. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing my hatha yoga." He says, "Oh, okay." He starts asking me about myself and whatever. And before he goes, he just says, "Just add Krishna." And I said, "Krishna's added." I said, "No problem. Krishna's added." Krishna's so attractive. That's why I was there. We were blown away how attractive the place was. So anyway, just add Krishna. That's Yukta Vairagya. Just add Krishna. That's all right. As Prabhupada says, what is the difficulty? What is the difficulty? Yes, we're entangled in all kinds of things. Just add Krishna. Krishna can sort it out. What's the meaning of God if God can't sort out your problems? There's no meaning to God. If you're too much of a challenge for God, what kind of God is that? Just add Krishna. If you're if you're overwhelmed with all kinds of life responsibilities or your body is breaking down, it doesn't matter. Either way, just add Krishna. If you're a grihasta or renunciant, a sannyasi or a brahmachari or a vanaprast, just add Krishna, right? So these anyway, that's Yukta Vairagya. So our other philosophy is Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. If you're going to give the elevator pitch, you gotta you gotta sum up to a philosophical person. And love in the heart. Then maybe you could jump into it. The very pure can explain anything to anyone. Uh, Prabhupada was just hearing yesterday, was talking to Saraswati, Malati's daughter. She's a little girl. And Malati said, "I want my Krishna." And Prabhupada launches into she just wanted a deity she had been given that her parents took away from her. And Prabhupada launched into this big explanation of how do you say it, Vipralamba Bhav of separation in Krishna as the highest love of God. And he's explaining this to a 4-year-old. So when you're a pure devotee, you can explain anything. But otherwise, for the rest of us, you really should be talking to somebody who understands, has read a little Plato, a little Aristotle, you know, Kant, Hare Krishna. Anyway, so if you're talking to somebody a little more philosophical, and you need to make the elevator pitch of what is our philosophy, Yukta Vairagya is pretty good. If you're talking to not particularly educated people, Yukta Vairagya is the philosophy to explain. I still make, especially the teenagers, know our other philosophy, which is Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Sambandha means you're a theist. You have a relationship with God. Once you accept that you have a relationship with means there are activities. Once you accept that you're a theist, then you have to act according to that relationship. That's Abhideya. And then Prayojana is the ultimate goal, back to Godhead and obtain Krishna Prema, pure love of God. So, and that has to do in English. The way I always explain this to the teenagers, and you probably heard me say this in previous classes, in English, that means Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana is in a kind of English is kind of, you know, German for retarded people. It's German for dummies. German is a watered down, shadowy version of Sanskrit, comes from Sanskrit originally, the proto German. Uh, so in the, and of course, Western civilization is a shadow of Greek civilization, Greek philosophy, for the most part, which is, of course, a shadow of Bhagavat philosophy, of Vedic philosophy. The Bhagavatam describes how some of the kings wound up going to Greece and founding the Greek civilization after the Battle of Kurukshetra, etc., and the Yadu dynasty becoming dissolved and whatnot. So we're living in the shadow of it now. So in our shadowy version in English, Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana is grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So logic, I always explain to the kids, well, what is logic? You can understand grammar is like the structure of things. Everything has a structure and a vocabulary. Uh, and you can understand the ultimate goal is to be able to express yourself that you love God. Prayojana. That's pretty understandable. If you love someone, you should be able to express to them that you love them. It's actually part of the purpose of an education, right? Education's a very small part of it is making money. Krishna is supplying for everyone. Your karma is there. Money's coming or not coming. But but you want to be able to, your parents, it's their duty to, and your spiritual master, it's their duty to make sure that you, and Prabhupada, his duty in his wonderful writings and purports, it's Prabhupada's duty to educate us so that we can express ourselves in glorification of God. That's prayojana, being able to express yourself. That's very hard to understand. Svidaya is a little more complicated. I've got this relationship with Krishna. I know the goal. Now what do I do? I've got a material body and mind, but I've been handed this all spiritual, all powerful, perfectly pure philosophy, this super high octane, ultra potent philosophy. What do I do now? That is Abhideya. Most of our life is lived in Abhideya. Uh, we have to have the other two things, but most of what we experience is in Abhideya. And that's logic. So, but it's not the logic of fanaticism, where everything is just a checklist, reducing life to my checklist. Oh, I have a relationship with you. Where do you fit on my checklist? People don't want to be on your checklist. Nobody wants to be on your checklist. No one. Everybody's got their own checklists and they've got hundreds of them. They're overwhelmed with their own checklist. They got no interest in being on yours. So fanaticism is not Abhideya. It's not that kind of logic. The kind of logic I always explain to the kids is what is logic? Just ask yourself these things, right? I make the kids think. What is logic? What is our philosophy? Okay, our philosophy, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana. What is logic? That's the part you're going to spend most of your life in. Logic is the supreme value of reading Prabhupada's purports 3 times in the Bhagavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Bhagavad Gita. Uh, Hearing from advanced disciples of Srila Prabhupada, advanced souls on the planet. And the incredible good fortune of that is that we get so much power, so much assistance in Abhideya, in logic. What is logic? Logic is eliminating the contradictions. That is what logic is. A very simple explanation. You guys can use this on your kids when you have kids. What is, you should be logical. Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana, that's our philosophy. this is lost on the kids. They've heard all these things. They hear it in class. They're around. They hear from the great souls. The parents are always taking their kids because they want them to get the association of these great souls. The Prabhupada launches into a big explanation to a 5 year old about Vipra Bob, right? So the kids are not stupid. They've heard all these things, but they want to hear explanations from their parents. Why? Because they're dependent on their parents, or to a lesser extent, their teachers, if they have teachers. But and so you should tell your kids logic. You can use this. Logic is eliminating the contradictions. That is logic. What I got to do is logic. There's not supposed to be any contradictions, right? Our ego wants to say, no, the checklist is all that should be. It's not really like that. So, and when you immerse yourself in the ocean of nectar of the Bhagavatam, you see, like Maharaj Radha, he's like, renunciation is the highest path. Forget this world. Aishtika Brahmachari, I'm gonna just go for it. Narad Muni, Narad Muni gave me all these instructions, said, don't do it, Prabhu, just stick with me, execute my orders, and stay out of the material entanglement. And Maharaj Priyavada is like, yes. But then his father is like, no, 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 pronounce now. I've sacrificed so much, I'm going to do it. And so he one-ups Narad Muni and gets Narad Muni's spiritual master, the Param Guru. He goes to the Param Guru. And that's called going to the top, right? He gets Lord Brahma. And, how are you going to argue with Lord Brahma? So Lord Brahma comes and says, no, no, the Lord wants you to enjoy. So go enjoy. Just never forget Krishna. Just add Krishna, Yukta Vairagya. So there's all this ambiguity, right? All this difficulty. So many statements in the Bhagavatam that seem to contradict each other. And this is the very famous chapter in the Bhagavatam where Prabhupada talks about how he was criticized for being involved in marriages, even though he was a sannyasi in India. I mean, he means he was criticized in India by Mayavadi, sannyasis or whoever, or or anyway, a little more fanatical people. And he makes it's Prabhupada's famous defense of himself as a sannyasi. Prabhupada didn't defend himself very often, but uh, there's a very famous defense Prabhupada makes where he says, I was criticized, but I am starting a society, a society. And society means there has to be children, right? Actually, a couple of verses further in this chapter, Maharaj Priyavada talks about the children that he has, and they're three of them are Naishtika brahmacharis, and they go on to become great renunciants. So he got to live vicariously through his children anyway, which is true. You get to live vicariously through your children. He got to get the total renunciation. In the end, he himself even totally renounced because he also had sons who became manus in themselves. But he had three that were brahmacharis, and they're described as from childhood. But then Prabhupada very ambiguously gives another definition, and he says this also can mean they were very affectionate to children, which means that just because you're a Naishtika brahmachari doesn't mean anything unless you're sacrificing for others, you're focused on others. So, and the ultimate people that a society sacrifices for are children, isn't it? So, anyway, all these things are very ambiguous. Yes, renunciation is the higher path, but where are you going to have a society from? Prabhupada says, my goal is creating a society, therefore I am involved in marriage. It's very famous. Prabhupada is showing us how he himself eliminates the contradictions, how he himself prosecuted a full life in Krishna consciousness, just adding Krishna for Varnashram Dham. So anyway, there's 10 minutes left. I better stop there. I have a lot of opinions about Varnashram Dham, which I decided to go a little into the philosophy of this chapter instead. Uh, one other thought I had while I was reading this is that this chapter also it evokes on a very, very deeper level. What is the meaning of happiness? You should always ask yourself, always ask the kids, what is happiness? Platitudes don't mean anything to anyone. Happiness is just a word that nobody knows how to get. You should know how to get it. You should know what it means. You should know and be able to explain to others the method of being happy. So this verse is very much about, to me, in a deeper way, that happiness is the compression of time. Krishna himself is time. Maharaj Priyavada, of course, lives a very long time. You know, thousands of years he's ruling the whole universe, you know. But you could add space. Maharaj Priyavada, Prabhupada describes he's beyond even Ikshvasu Manu, who's ruling this planet. And Prabhupada says, and so therefore in the next verses, he says, but, you know, Maharaj Priyavada is described as the emperor of all the universes. Therefore, he must be higher than Ikshvasu Manu. He's a higher Manu. And so Maharaj Priyavada is ruling all the universes. Uh, so, I mean, that's a lot of territory. So, anyway, with Krishna, because Krishna wants him to play a role. A father plays a role. A husband plays a role. A wife plays a role. These are roles. They're not ultimately who you are, but you can play them. So, playing these roles uh, is important. And when you have Krishna, the supreme goal of Krishna, making Krishna the supreme friend, trying to develop love in your heart for Krishna and feeling separation from Krishna. When we add Krishna, then happiness is this compression of time and space where we feel so fearless. Prabhupada describes that devotees are not afraid of any condition, even material enjoyment, the most difficult of all traps, material enjoyment. Devotees are not even afraid of that when they have Krishna. So it's all good. And to me, at a deeper level, that's what happiness is, that there's plenty of time. You know, when you're doing devotional service, there's plenty of time, actually. Seems like time is against us in our material bodies and minds. You know, we're all slowly dying or quickly dying. But with Krishna, Krishna is time itself, and we feel so happy, isn't it? You know, experiencing devotional service. Anyway, but maybe somebody has some opinion on Varnashram Dham. This is all about Maharaj Priyavarta executing Varnashram Dham. I decided not to give any of my extremely strong opinions on Varnashram Dham, but maybe Taraka Prabhu or the great, if he's still on, Yashadev Das has a strong opinion they'd like to share on Prabhupada's desires for our society and the example of Maharaj Priyavrata. Or any questions or comments if you want to hear my opinion.
I'd like to hear your opinion.
On Varnashram Dham. All right, I'll give you the elevator pitch version. Why don't we have, it's easier to start with negatives. So it's also a trick you can use in educating children is to teach when you have to teach children to think. That's your responsibility as a parent. So you can always start with opposites. You just teach them to recognize opposites, hot, cold, and they love that because they can succeed at it. You're not setting them up to fail. Every kid, every child, even a 2-year-old knows hot and cold. So you can always start thinking about any topic based on the opposite. And that means that you can always go to the negative. Buddhism, like a whole religion of neti neti, right? It's not that. So you can always go to the negative, right? What's not the purpose of life? Anyway, neti neti, that's Buddhism in a nutshell. So what is not Varnashram Dham? So the whole problem with the world today is, uh, I get this from Dev Swami. He gave us a lecture once at a men's retreat. He said the whole problem with the world today is that men are weak. Uh, I always explain this to the kids, especially the teenagers. You need to know these things. I explained to them that I just elected myself able to add in a second part to that, uh, and that is the whole problem with the world today. Why we don't have Varnashram Dham is that at the moment, of course, it's Kali Yuga, so we all know why everything's upside down. But you know, what are the reasons why? Is that the men are weak? That's a fact, and the women are stupid. So women are like fire, men are like butter. If the women had parents who bothered to educate them, Teach them how to think properly about life. Insist that they read the Srimad Bhagavatam. Read it with them. You insist that a child reads the Srimad Bhagavatam. Read these 18 volumes. You point your finger at them. Read it. No. The way you insist is you read it with them. Right? You teach them how to give class. I made all the kids give class every day. I have to give class. Prabhu was just chastising me. Sarvatma Prabhu telling me it would benefit me to come to class. I actually don't like Zoom classes. So I went to class every single day practically for 10 years in New Zealand, which was to my great benefit. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, the Association of Devotees, is very valuable. Anyway, but I used to make the kids give class. Just teach them the format. Say, when you come to the realizations, if you don't have anything to say, then just say Hare Krishna. That's good enough. Everything's contained in Krishna's holy names, right? The kids like that. Then they're not under any pressure, but they learn the format. And I always explain to them, your mind can rest on the format, right? So what Varnashram Dham is a format for society, and your mind can rest in it. It's not the ultimate thing, right? It becomes the ultimate thing because it's Krishna's system. Daivi Varnashram, uh, meaning the divine Varnashram system created by Krishna himself. We follow it. What does that mean? So Varnashram means that the women must be intelligent, that the men must be strong, must not be weak. So, and it's the father's responsibility to teach their daughters to be intelligent, to select highly capable husbands. And I always explain that Hare Krishnas, they're so happy, uh, they've got Krishna, the magic dust of Krishna is on them. Even when they're suffering, they're happy. That's great. So you got nothing to lose. Therefore, you should play your role as much as possible. And so that means that the ladies especially, because women are like fire, men are like butter, right? If the women, or Plato said this also. Plato said we have to educate the women because we're wasting half our best people if we don't, right? We have to have a society. You can't have a society. You can't have the republic, Plato's republic, without you know everyone knowing how it operates, right? That's Varnashram Dham. So the problem with the world today is the men are weak and the women are stupid, quite frankly. They go for weak men, thinking that magically, oh, I'm Hare Krishna now, so magically Krishna's going to fix everything. Well, yes, in your next lifetime, you'll have a spiritual mind and a spiritual body. You won't make these mistakes. But in this lifetime, it's your job for preaching. If you want to be a Prabhupada Nuga, if you want to do something for your spiritual master, besides just be happy and go back to Godhead, which you should do, that's wonderful. That's fine. But you should also have a great life to set an example for other people. Just look at the Amish in our neighborhood here. Amish are having a great life. They're so attractive. They've got lots of happy kids. I drive down the road. There's all the Amish kids out playing. They're all in their wonderful little uniform. They're living their philosophy. They're they're just like dodging it. The women are like, no, you marry me. We have a nice philosophy. We have a lifestyle. You have to give me lots of kids. Not like 10, 20 years from now, but now, right? That's an intelligent woman. So, and the women are like fire. So the men will follow the women if the women are educated. That is the responsibility of fathers. When you get married, Varnashram basically means, as Prabhupada identifies in this chapter, Prabhupada immediately starts defending himself for being involved in marriages, right? That's what society means to Prabhupada. It means marriages. When he says society, he doesn't mean like you can't have a society of only brahmacharis and sannyasis and vanaprahas. It doesn't work that way. Yes, they're the leaders of the society, but you actually need the society, which means there has to be marriages. And that means you must want to be a father if you're a man. Right? That's what strength means. What does it mean to be strong? This thing should be explained to the kids. You should ask them, what is our philosophy? What is happiness? What does it mean to be strong? I need to be able to explain to the kids from Prabhupada's books. This is why we read Prabhupada's book, right? It's a real test to explain to the kids what our philosophy means. You're making some advancement in life if you can explain to the kids what philosophy is. Then maybe can go out and preach to the wider world of crazy people out there. But our kids aren't crazy. Kids are unbelievably fortunate, and they should know, right? If you have daughters, sons, the sons should know they should want to be fathers, right? Fatherhood means you have to educate your daughters to not be stupid and not choose ridiculous men who just want to, hide out in false renunciation, yet still be married or still have a wife. That's bogus, right? You should want to be a father, right? The Amish are a wonderful example here, right? Anyway, so the Amish don't have our philosophy. We're just bewildered, I guess. We have this super ultra philosophy. We have the greatest philosophy by far. But anyway, so so that's my opinion. My opinion is on the negative side, our trouble is that our Hare Krishna women are stupid and the men are weak. That's just the negative side. Obviously, we have so many wonderful devotees. Krishna is arranging. And I'm not in charge of anybody's life. I've been the poster child for stupidity and weakness myself. So I'm just talking about my opinion on a broader, generalized scientific point. We must educate our daughters first and foremost. And the men naturally must be the hero and they will rise to the occasion. If the daughters don't accept weak men, but why does a woman accept a weak man? Because she's stupid. Nobody bothered to educate her. Nobody bothered to sit and read the Bhagavatam with her. What does it mean to insist on reading Prabhupada's books? It means you sit and read it with them. You pay attention to them, right? And you have to start that early in life. So, so that's my opinion, Prabhu. Uh, Hare Krishna. Anybody have any final comments? They haven't opened the gates yet, so we can carry on. They must have extra special opulent
You've got two
dress.
hands up, Prabhu.
Yes, please go ahead. I can't see the hands up. Kaylee, go ahead.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you for this class. It was really upbeat and very interesting viewpoints. I do kind of agree with a lot of them. Just wanted to make a quick comment. I watched this show called The Chosen where they have like it's about the Jewish people, and it was really unique to see actually the women were taking care of the household, and they were always actually reminding their husbands of God and the real importance of life, because the men are out working, so it's a little bit easier to kind of get caught up in this material. So I really, yeah, I think that was a nice point. My question also is how I'm going back to the translation really quick. Oh, because here in this translation, it's kind of giving he's Lord Brahma is giving this instruction to Maharaj Priyavrata, but this is kind of like an exception. No, is this kind of general, or is this only for people like Priyavrata? Like, could it be dangerous for just anyone, because maybe people could enter this and get super carried away? What are your thoughts on that? Like, is it more specific or?
The extraordinary instruction to Maharaj Priyavata. Well, part of the reason this is extraordinary is because these are extraordinary personalities, without a doubt. Uh, Maharaj Priyavrata is a pure devotee. He's completely convinced and fixed on the complete philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada explains he's completely Krishna conscious, so he wants to go for renunciation. Uh, so yes, it's extraordinary because Maharaj Priyavrata really is great. I'll give you part of an answer from America's only great philosopher, in my opinion. It was Ralph Waldo Emerson, who is on the back of our Bhagavad Gita, so I'm allowed to talk about him. He's quoted on the back of our Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada quoted him on the back cover of the Bhagavad Gitas, uh, where he glorifies the Bhagavad Gita, which is nice. But he also has a quote from his very excellent essay, Compensation, um, where he says that a great man is always willing to be little. In fact, I can they're still going. I can read you the whole thing. It's a very famous quote by him. A great man is always willing to be little. Again, that's ambiguity, right? So, uh, the essay is quite long, but this is just one paragraph from it. The indignation which arms itself with secret forces. So Maharaj Priyavrata was indignant. He's telling his own father, Moody, I don't want your instruction to become the emperor and get entangled in all this stuff. I'm not taking over for you. I'm going off with Narad Moody. I'm going to travel with my spiritual master. Right? Indignation. I don't want to do it. Indignation means no. It means it's not dignified. It would be beneath my dignity to be involved in your society. I'm going off with I'm going to travel with my spiritual master. The indignation which arms itself with secret forces does not awaken until we are pricked and stung and sorely assailed. A great man is always willing to be little. That's the famous quote. Whilst he sits on the cushion of advantages, he goes to sleep. I mean, being a renunciant is the ultimate advantage. It's the topmost path, right? You're more advantaged. While he sits on the cushion of advantages, he goes to sleep. When he is pushed, tormented, defeated, he has a chance to learn something. He's been put on his wits, on his manhood. He has gained facts. He learns his ignorance, is cured of the insanity of conceit, has got moderation and real skill. The wise man throws himself on the side of his assailants. It is more his interest than it is theirs to find his weak points. So Maharaj Priyavrata is convinced by Lord Brahma. Okay, all right, I'll do it. And he does it. But then Prabhupada in the end says, he never forgot his Krishna consciousness. And later in life, when he had qualified sons, he immediately viewed his wife like a dead body and took renunciation, finally. And this was my point about happiness being a compression of time. When you have Krishna, Krishna is the controller of time. You don't have to worry. So you can say, well, is this for other people? Um, uh, with Krishna, you have everything. So you know, there's also the statement that destiny is all powerful, so you're not going to have to worry about it. But really, the reason that we have class is to care about each other so that we can support each other in thinking about these things. Your destiny is going to happen. Krishna's got a plan for you, and Krishna hasn't forgotten about you. But we can all support each other in thinking about our relationship with Krishna. And Bhagavatam does that so extraordinarily well, helping us to think about these contradictions. And one of the ambiguities is that yes, in a way, these personalities are in direct contact with Krishna. They're living in Satya Yuga. They're hanging out with Narad Muni. But we're hanging out with great souls too. Damrita Swami. We have the deities here, Radha Damodar. Uh, Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness is a perfect gem. I mean, it is all powerful. And a symptom of devotional service is fearlessness. So yes, one of the ambiguities is that once you've accepted Krishna, there's nothing higher than Krishna. There's nothing higher than a Chincha Beta Tattva or a Chincha Beta Beta Tattva, Guru Tattva. Once you're kind of like, yeah, I'm going to serve my spiritual master, you're going back to Godhead. That's wonderful. That's your next life. That's your next body and your next mind. You'll have a spiritual body and a spiritual mind, which will not have any of the problems that you have now, right? Or you have a material body and mind, and you have Krishna consciousness. That is the paradigm, the paradoxical paradigm that we live in, the ambiguity that we live in. That's why we have Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana. We have all these activities that we can engage ourselves with Krishna, even with our material body and mind. So why not go for it? You can say, well, I'll just be humble but in this case, I will assert that Maharaj Priyavrata, he like, you know, like, prove I could just travel with my spiritual master. I don't need any of this. He can be so strong. He's so extraordinary. And yet, you know, He's there's so many things there, right? Narad Muni also accepts. Narad Muni doesn't argue with Lord Brahma. He could. There's no argument between Lord Brahma and Narad Muni in this chapter about Maharaj Priyavrata. They don't start fighting over this who gets the disciple, right? So Narad Muni also just accepts. Okay, well, Lord Brahma. There is Vaishnav etiquette, right? So Lord Brahma is the senior to Narad Muni. So there's no argument. Maharaj Priyavrata has this strong desire to like chuck it all and just go back to Godhead, you know, being done with all this society and everything else, and have a spiritual body in mind in his next life, like Narad Muni, right? Narad Muni's here stirring the pot of all the people with material bodies and minds, right? But he's got a spiritual body, Narad Muni. He can go anywhere he wants because he's got a spiritual body. So Maharaj Priyavada is like, this material body in mind. I'm going to get a spiritual body. I'm going to hang out with my spiritual master, Narad Muni, and get a spiritual body like him. That's wonderful. But at the same time, you can also have a great life in this lifetime with your material body in mind. And you should, if you want. I mean, if you want to, you don't have to take any instruction from me. I'm just some rascal. But uh, but if you want my permission, have a great life, Kaylee. There's nothing wrong. You also can have an extraordinary life. So yes, this is an extraordinary circumstance, but why can't your life be extraordinary? You also can be like Maharaj Priyavata and have your extraordinariness be the willingness to just educate children who aren't weak and ignorant, right? Uh, so, and if you've messed up with your material body and mind, I certainly have, but I have two wonderful children who are not weak and they're not ignorant. One's a son and one's a daughter. And I get redemption for that because I bothered to care about them and give them an education. So you can do the same thing. You can have a great life. You have all support with the devotees. That is extraordinary. If you just look at our neighbors, the Amish, why are they famous? Why is it there's only 100,000 Amish or 300,000? Maybe there's 300,000 now. There's not even a million Amish, right, in the world. And yet they're super famous. For their population, they have an outsized fame. Why? Because they're extraordinary. They're going for it. They're they're living a wonderful life. You live a wonderful life. You have my permission. Please do so. Be extraordinary with your material body in mind. Of course, the only way to really do that is with Krishna. Everything comes back to philosophy. So, by the way, there's a little trick to that for if you're gonna, I mean, you can decide, well, I'll just only serve my. I mean, as a woman, you're not even going to really get to travel with the spiritual master. That doesn't happen so much. Is it going to happen now? Or you're going to do Prabhupada puja? Am I missing how this? They are going to open now. Okay. Demaya's going to. We should welcome Nikolai. Nikolai, welcome. Let me come and show your face to all the devotees. Will you come over here, please? This is Nikolai. Welcome to Gita Nagari, Nikolai. He's just arrived from Los Angeles last night. Okay, well, then, Nikolai, thank you for your tolerance and your kind appreciation and glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. Kaylee, have a great life. Haribol. Granthraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai, thank you.
Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Adishatarini. Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radhe. Shankashmira, Vichakala, Sai. Hare Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda He has made love Pura Bhakta